afternoon. Welcome to Watsonville. My name is Jenny Sarmiento and I'm a planning commissioner. So before we get started, I would like to, for those of you who've never been in this building before, the restrooms are right down the hall here. The men's and women's restrooms, so please feel free to step out when you need to. So the first thing that I would like to do is to welcome you to Watsonville and also invite someone, our Mayor, Lowell Hurst, to come and give you a brief welcome to Watsonville.
Well, thank you very much, Jenny, and I want to thank everybody who came today, and I'll bet there'll be some people who maybe arrived late, because I hear that there's a little traffic on the freeway. Now, I don't go to Santa Cruz all that often anymore, but when I do, coming back to Watsonville in the afternoon seems to be a big challenge for some people. And so, you know, I think that's one of the reasons that we're all here today, and I think everybody's got different reasons, but I've studied this issue for a while, and, you know, I'm a really lucky retiree in the fact that, you know, I've been all over the world and hiked the Machu Picchu trail, and they didn't have sidewalks there, but I do remember taking the train part way to Machu Picchu as well, and you got off in the middle of nowhere, and then it was 6 days. If you lollygagged like I did, it was 6 days to get to Machu Picchu after you got off the train. So that was a lot of fun. And then I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the Kingdom of Nepal. And you know, they have trails in Nepal. And you could go on a trail for 3 or 4 weeks and not get back to where you were coming for a while. And so, you know, trails and rails are pretty interesting things, and I think they do coexist in a lot of places, and you see that all over the country. We took the SMART train not too long ago from Marin to San Rafael to Sonoma. That's where it went, and that was lots of fun too. And so I just want to say welcome to everybody. This is the house that good government built. And some of you probably haven't been in this room before, and I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad we have a clear sky out here this evening for the most part, and you can enjoy the view. You understand where the restrooms are at already, but I want you to take a look at the old pictures on the wall too as you come and go. And maybe you'll even see some people that you know. Who knows? Well, anyway, thanks for being here, and I'm a supporter of better transportation. I'm certainly a big supporter of the Land Trust and the wonderful work that they've done in the community. And, you know, we just all need to work together and try and make things better everywhere we go instead of fussing and fighting and arguing. And I thought this flyer was pretty good here. It says, "Are you confused?" Well, I think there is a lot of intentional confusion out there these days, and we need to sort through that and read the fine print and kind of understand where people are coming from as well. So I'm glad to see all of you here today, and I hope we have a great presentation, and I'll hang around if anybody's got any questions or just wants to say hi to me. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much, and welcome once again to the Rail with Transit panel discussion. So we're very fortunate to have some experts in the house. I would like to first introduce and invite Chair of the Santa Cruz Sierra Club Transportation Committee, Jack Nelson, to give us an overview of why the Sierra Club's position in supporting the favor of the Trail with Transit.
Hello, buenas noches, bienvenidos a todos. My name is Jack Nelson, and I am the chair of a little 10-person Santa Cruz County Sierra Club Transportation Committee. By the end of the evening, you're thinking you might like to participate with us, find me. And the Sierra Club is online at sierraclub.org. That's one way to do it, or find our local Untitled Chapter and then the Santa Cruz group within that. Before I go any further, there's one person I need to thank here who really did so much of the legwork for this event to happen so that you knew about it, so all the things and devices and snacks are here. And she's a member of our transportation committee. She's sitting over here in the pink shirt. Her name is Sally Arnold. Please just Okay. So the local Sierra Club supports public transportation. We like all kinds of public transportation. And so you won't be surprised if we support, as the words say, trail with transit. That's public transportation and a bicycle and pedestrian trail on the, how many miles is it, 32 miles rail corridor from here to Santa Cruz and up to Davenport. This is consistent with the National Sierra Club's transportation policy. That's a multi-million member organization. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the national policy. This is from the official adopted policy. And part of that says, the Sierra Club supports transportation policy and systems that, and then there are a series of bullet points. I'll just give you one. Strengthen local communities, towns, and urban centers, and promote equal opportunity. So one value in public transportation is you don't need a lot to get on board. You might need to pay a fare, but you don't need to own a car. You don't need a smartphone. Mostly, you just need to show up. We love that. The Sierra Club favors the most energy and land conserving and least polluting transportation systems and vehicles. So walking and bicycling are best, along with electronic communications to reduce trips. Next are buses and rail transit and electric whenever feasible. And lastly, I'll mention rail systems are most effective in stimulating compact development, increasing public transit ridership, and reducing motor vehicle use. So we're looking for alternatives to cars. I used a car to get here tonight, but I'm aware that every tailpipe out there is emitting air pollution, it's emitting greenhouse gases. As a climate change activist, I'm thinking about future generations. What are they going to think of us living with a changed climate? Are they going to thank us for that? Well, I doubt it. And so I think we all have some kind of obligation as human beings to see what we can do about that. And so that's what we're talking about tonight. And so again, you're welcome to participate with the Sierra Club, and thanks for being here.
Thank you. Well, the next thing that I would like to do is thank our co-sponsors for participating today. And all of them are in acronyms, so I don't know all of them. But I have to tell you that all the names are on this card, so I'm sure that you'll recognize some of these. BSCC, which I think it's by Santa Cruz County. EA, Environmental Ecology Action. Thank you. LTSCC.
Land Trust, Santa Cruz County.
Wow, this is a test. I already failed. 350.org, CFST, Fort, I know that one, Friends of the Rail and Trail, Bike Friendly Watsonville, of course I know that one because it's my hometown, and also Regeneración, Regeneration also because it's my hometown, so I'm very familiar with all the names here. If you would like more information about these organizations, please, when you have a chance, visit their tables, get information, and also fill out this card with your information. This is not to put you on a mailing list, but if you want information for one particular agency, all you have to do is circle the agency, turn it in at the end of the discussion today, and we'll make sure that we connect you with them, send you more information about them and their events, and support their activities as well. So thank you. And again, in addition to that, what we are asking you to do, because at the last panel discussion that we had, I don't know, over 100, 200 questions. And it's really difficult to answer all the questions, and people sometimes get frustrated if their questions are not answered. Please write them here. What we will do is collect them during the the discussion and group them so we ask the most frequently asked questions right away. If your question is not answered, you can write your name and phone number or email address, and we'll make sure that we get back to you with the answer. So here's a card, and then write your questions. If you already have a question now, or as people are talking, you come up with some questions that you would like answered. Please fill it out, and Sally is going to help us and some volunteers to collect the questions.
So if you need more cards, I'll just be walking around now and then. I'll be happy to hand you cards, or just hand me your filled out card.
So the format for tonight is that we will have a brief presentation by our rails and trails and anything engineering and traffic from our expert, Mark Massetti Miller, and followed by questions and answers for the panelists. And again, please fill out some questions. So I would like to invite Mark Massetti Miller to come up and give us a brief presentation. Mark is a 35-year resident of Santa Cruz and a professional civil engineer. He has more than 3 decades of experience engineering notable projects such as the Walton Lighthouse, the Seymour Marine Discovery Center, and the Santa Cruz Metropolitan Transit District's new headquarters. He's also been a district engineer for 11 years at the Transit District. He is also a planning commissioner. On his free time, he volunteers as the board of the Friends of the Rail and Trail. He is the executive and transportation committee of the local Sierra Club member. And he's also on the board as the chair of the Santa Cruz Area Chamber of Commerce. I don't know when he has time to do anything else. Thank you, Mark. Rachel will help us with the time, and so she will show you when you have 1 minute.
Okay.
And then
How much time do I have?
well, for both, just to give him an idea. He's got to win.
It's going to be really fast.
Yes.
1 minute.
Say it all. You have to win.
Wait, is this working? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you for that great introduction, and thank you all for coming here tonight. It is my pleasure to be here, and I'm going to cover a lot of ground. This is a very big topic. When you start talking about transportation, you can almost talk for days. But I'm going to give you a brief overview, and then we'll get to some questions, and hopefully you can walk out of here with a better understanding of what's being proposed for our community. So as Janie said, I'm a professional engineer. I've spent over 3 decades of my life doing exactly this, heavy public works infrastructure. And tonight, I'm the chair of the Friends of the Rail and Trail, but I'm also on the Sierra Club, the XCOM. And so tonight, I'm going to be talking about rail and trail, but what I want you to hear tonight is that we might be talking about, on the corridor, we might be talking about bus rapid transit, or called BRT, rail transit, of course, what we're sort of about, and also even personal rapid transit. So there's many ways of moving people around, and the RTC is studying that, and we'll talk more about that later tonight. But I just want to be clear, so every time tonight when I say rail, you can substitute bus rapid transit maybe, or BRT, or some other kind of public transit. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So what are we going to be talking about tonight? We're going to be talking about traffic. We are all suffering from traffic. Everybody in this room experiences traffic congestion on our highways, on our surface streets, in our neighborhoods. And that's really creating a problem for our community. It's siloing people, it's choking our businesses, it's really creating a lot of problems for us. So we need a plan. We need a plan to somehow address this problem. And we're going to talk a little bit about opportunity. So I think earlier tonight someone said, there's a lot of people going from here to Santa Cruz. Kind of the Santa Cruz area stands for opportunity. There's a lot of businesses there, there's a university there, there's a lot of opportunity there. And there's a lot of people in this area, in the Pajaro Valley, that are seeking that opportunity. And we all have to get, from one place to another twice a day. And we all got to go through Aptos. And so Aptos is also named the Aptos Strangler. Because in Aptos we have 2 transportation corridors. We have Soquel Avenue, Soquel Drive, It's a 2-lane road, and we have a highway, Highway 1, a 4-lane highway. All the traffic's got to fit through those 2 arteries. The other thing we have that we haven't used is the rail corridor. And so we think that using that corridor for public transportation, mass public transportation, is the way to address our traffic congestion problems. So what do we need in this plan? This plan needs to have options for everybody. It needs options for people regardless of the weather, whether it's raining or sunny, no matter how old you are or young you are, regardless of your ability, whether you can ride a bike or not. And of course, we have to be able to accommodate people of all health, whether you're in good health or poor. We also need to think about the environment. We need a plan that's going to address our greenhouse gas emissions. This county, transportation accounts for 1/2 of the greenhouse gas emissions in Santa Cruz County. So addressing transportation and reducing our greenhouse gas emissions will have an effect on global warming. And global warming is a problem. I'm sure you've all read. Forest fire season starting earlier, the droughts, the storms, the floods, those are all a result of global warming. But right here in our community, sea level rise is an issue. So addressing global warming is going to reduce the amount of sea level rise that we're going to have to deal with. It's also going to protect our fragile coastal ecosystem. There's been a number of professors who make their livelihood studying ecosystems, and what they've told me is that our redwood forest ecosystem, which occupies much of the Santa Cruz Mountains, is really in danger of being threatened by global warming. It's very sensitive to temperature and very sensitive to moisture. So the fog that we used to see all the time, we're not seeing that so much anymore. Those redwoods depend on that. So it's important for us to address global warming. The good news is we have a plan. Back in 2013, this plan, the Monterey Bay Sanctuary Scenic Trail Network Master Plan, was adopted. This plan was developed over 3 years, lots and lots of public input, lots of workshops, a whole team of professional transportation planners got together, and they said, what can we do with that rail corridor to address this problem? And they came up with this plan. The plan is build a trail and keep the rail, because someday we're going to need that rail for moving people. So what's in this plan, and where does it go? Well, the rail corridor, for those who don't know, the rail corridor extends from Watsonville all the way to Davenport. Along the way, it goes through La Selva Beach, Aptos, Soquel, Capitola, Live Oak, Santa Cruz. It goes through the densest parts of our county. More people live along this corridor. 1/2 of the entire county population lives within 1 mile of the railroad line. Half the county's population within 1 mile. It's also within 1 mile of 92 parks. It's also within 1 mile of 42 schools. So this is an artery that we could really use to move people around. So let's talk a little bit about the trail part of this plan. The trail part builds a trail alongside the rail. This is an illustration from that Monterey Bay Sanctuary Scenic Trail Network Master Plan document. And as you can see, we have a trail that could be used for biking or walking or skateboarding or whatever other way you want to move around, sort of pedestrian or cycling style. And we built alongside the train. Now, in all cases, it won't be right next to the train. The right-of-way is actually 70 feet wide on average. The train needs about 17 of those feet, which leaves about 53 feet for a trail. So that trail is about 12 feet wide. It could be anywhere in that 50 feet. So wherever we can, we'll move it a little further away from the tracks and give ourselves a little more space for that corridor, that rail trail. So how wide will that rail trail be? Well, let's compare it first to other trails we're familiar with. So people who live around here are probably familiar with the Watsonville Slough Trail Network. That network is made of 8-foot wide paved trails. So that's how wide those are. Many other trails in our community are about 8 feet wide as well. The trail that goes out to Wilder Ranch, for example, from North Santa Cruz to Wilder Ranch, that's an 8-foot wide paved path. The Arana Gulch Trail, which connects Broadway to Brommer, is 8 feet wide. The San Lorenzo River in Santa Cruz has a trail that goes all the way around the river, Highway 1, back down to the beach. It's about 10 foot on average. The rail trail that we're building, is 12 feet minimum and 16 feet wherever we can make it 16 feet. So it will be the widest trail in the county. So what does this master plan have in it? It's got the widest, longest paved trail in the county. This trail will serve everyone who wants to use it. It's the fastest way to get a trail. It's already adopted, it's approved. We have approvals from the city of Watsonville, city of Capitola, city of Santa Cruz, the county of Santa Cruz, the Regional Transportation Commission, even the Coastal Commission has blessed this plan. It is fully approved and ready to go. 13 miles. This is a 32-mile long corridor. 13 miles of this corridor is already underway. We have begun design. In some cases, we're actually going to be starting construction. This August, we'll be breaking ground on the very first segment of the rail trail. It'll be on the west side of Santa Cruz. And 2 years ago, we passed Measure D. Some of you may remember Measure D, the transportation measure, half-cent sales tax for 30 years. With Measure D and the money that we had already allocated to the rail trail from other grants and donations, the rail trail is essentially fully funded. The best news is it could be complete from one end to the other in about 10 years. That's a good trail. So we still have a congestion problem, right? We have a trail, but we still have a congestion problem. How do we solve that problem? And why do we think it's going to be getting worse? Current population projections for our county are that we're going to add another 30,000 or so people to our county by the year 2040. That's about 20 years from now, not very long. How many is 30,000 people? That's 3 more cities the size of Capitola. That's a lot of people. They got to move around somehow. So really, we have a couple of choices for moving more people around in our county. One is we can expand Highway 1. We can add high-occupancy vehicle lanes, which many people have said would be a big boost to our community in terms of transportation. Or we can add passenger rail transit. The difference is that those things have very different cost figures. High-occupancy vehicle lanes have been estimated to be about $600 million. In 2015, there was a rail transit feasibility study for a pretty robust passenger rail system. The estimate was $133 million. Even if we rounded that up to, say, $150 million, spent a little bit more, got a little bit nicer train, we'd still only be spending a quarter of the money to build that system. The other thing you have to keep in mind when you start talking about public works infrastructure is where are you going to get the money? So the money for highway may be a little bit harder to come in the future because California just issued the 2018 state rail plan. And in that plan, the state of California announced to the whole world that we're no longer funding highway expansion. We're moving from highway expansion to railway expansion. Their goal is to radically change the railway system in the state of California to serve the needs of the growing population. So if we're looking for money to build something, we better look for the state and we better see what they're doing. And they're about railway expansion. So we think keeping the tracks is just plain smart. So why don't we talk a little about what modern rail transit might look like? So many people around here probably are familiar with heavy locomotives. So they rumble through town, they're loud, they're noisy, they smell like diesel fumes. But modern rail is electric, it's lightweight, probably 15% of the weight of a locomotive. They are whisper quiet. The crossings are no longer need to have the loud horns like a freight train has. We have technology called quiet zone crossings. So instead what you hear is a ding, ding, ding as the train goes by instead of a loud horn. I can't even make that loud of a noise. So you got to think quiet, very quiet. Here's an example of a modern passenger rail system that just opened. It's the first passenger rail system to open in Northern California in more than 50 years. It opened last September. It's called the Sonoma Marin Area Rail Transit, or SMART for short. That train in that picture holds 300 people. Not only does it hold 300 people, it holds 22 bicycles. This train has proved so popular in 4 months after it opened. There were so many bicyclists that wanted to use this train every day for commuting, they had to add a third car so they could just accommodate the bicyclists that wanted to use this. These trains extend bicycle trips. And the thing that's the big difference between SMART and us is SMART built the train first, and now they're building the trail. We're building the trail first with a train to come later. So what does SMART look like on the inside? What's that inside experience? Modern rail transit, these are very comfortable vehicles. They're smooth, they're quiet. Every SMART train has a little cafe inside. You can buy a cup of coffee and a pastry on your way to work. On your way home, you get a nice cold beer, a glass of wine. You can relax with your friends, you can work. Very comfortable. So how do we afford this? Trains are expensive, right? Public works infrastructure is expensive. So I alluded to that state rail plan a little bit earlier, but there's 3 huge things that have happened in the last 3 years. In 2016, we passed Measure D. Measure D is going to raise $700 million for transportation improvement projects in this county of Santa Cruz. Part of that money is allocated to the rail trail. Part of that money is allocated to the rail maintenance, transportation maintenance of our rail corridor. In 2017, last year, to everyone's surprise, Governor Brown signed Senate Bill 1. As of right now, Senate Bill 1 has resulted in $17 million a year flowing into this county for transportation. That money can be used for capital improvements or maintenance and operations. It's up to us to decide how we spend that money. That Senate bill is, threatened by a repeal this year. Voters, I hope everybody in this room votes no to repeal that measure. But if it survives this repeal, it will be permanent. It is permanent, and it's indexed to inflation, so it continues to rise every year. Lastly, I mentioned earlier the state rail plan. They're serious. The state of California identified $136.8 billion. Let's round it off to $137 billion. Folks, that's a lot of money. That is just a lot of money. I did a little analysis. I figured what would be the population weighted share of for Santa Cruz County's share of that money. If you took the population of Santa Cruz County and you divided it by the state of California and you multiplied it times 136.8 billion, you end up with $957 million. That is our population weighted share of that state rail plan money. Now, we have to compete for that money, but the good news is we're now a self-help county. Measure D made us into a self-help county, which allows us to compete for our fair share of that money. What that means is we could build a rail system in our county with no new taxes. Monterey County, if you were paying attention, they received a grant from SB1 just a few months ago that will allow them to bring Caltrain down to Salinas with stops in Pajaro and Castroville. That money was awarded just a couple of months ago. It'll take a few years for them to build that out. Probably 2022, I think, was the prediction I heard for bringing Caltrain down to Salinas. No new taxes. That was money that was granted to the city of Salinas. So how fast is a modern rail transit system? So many people here are probably familiar with how long it takes them to get places in a car. So in 2015, that rail transit feasibility study that I mentioned earlier, the experts got together and they said, you know what? We can figure this out. It would take, according to those experts, it would take 39 minutes to go from Watsonville to downtown Santa Cruz. 39 minutes every time, no matter what the weather's like, no matter what the traffic's like. From Aptos to Santa Cruz would be 18 minutes. From Capitola to Santa Cruz, 11 minutes. I don't know what you figure on transit times now, but that's about half or more for many people. And how much would it cost? In that transit feasibility study, they figured it would be about $2.50 each way, $5 round trip. Most people that would use it every day would buy an all-access transit pass. And they didn't estimate what that would be, but if we look around at other communities, we think an all-access pass that would give you access to all of the buses and the light rail would be about $100 to $125 a month. Compare that to the cost of owning a car. AAA estimates that cost at about $800 a month. You'd be saving about $600, $500, $600 a month every month if you could ditch your car and just rely on transit. What about the environment? There's some conversation about how good a trail would be, but when you add rail to it, we're looking at reducing vehicle miles traveled. The best measure of congestion relief and greenhouse gas reduction would be about 5 to 10 times better than trail only. So adding a train really makes that transportation system sing. What about our quality of life? How about getting to work on time every time? How about getting rid of your car altogether, reducing the total cost of living? If you can cut $500 a month out of your budget for a car, that makes life a lot more enjoyable. How about enjoying your commute? Visiting with your friends instead of sitting in a car. Oh, thank you. You can even read a book while you're sitting on the train. Get a degree. There's a mother of two, a single mother of two, was one going to Stanford, taking Caltrain to work every day. On her ride to work, on her ride home, she got a master's degree. Got a big promotion, got a pay raise. It could change your life. What about the trail-only option? So some people in our community are advocating for tearing out the tracks and building a trail-only option. That has a few really big problems that would be addressed. One is that taking out those tracks would cause a delay of at least 10 years in building anything. Whoops. it would cost a lot more money to tear out those tracks. You'd have to pay the state back the $20 million they gave us to buy the rail corridor. You'd have to redo the master plan, the EIR, get new permissions from state and federal governments, permissions that may not be granted. The RTC estimated that additional cost would be about $32 million, at least $32 million. Plus there'd be some litigation costs. One thing many people don't know is our rail corridor, only about 1/3 of our rail corridor is actually owned outright. The other 2/3 of our rail corridor is an easement. An easement is a permission to use someone else's land for a purpose. Those easements were granted about 100 years ago. Those easements are for the construction, operation, and maintenance of a rail line, not for anything else. So if you want to take those tracks out, you're going to renegotiate those easements. Up in Seattle, they did this in 2014, after years of litigation. They were able to, salvage the easements. It cost $140 million to settle that property rights litigation. Oops. Also, it's unfair to the majority. Under the best of circumstances, you might get 10 or 20% of the people to be able to use a rail corridor, use a trail only, riding their bikes to work or whatever. What happens to the other 80% of the people? Davis, California, the most successful bicycle city in the United States, has a mode share. 20% of the people in Davis, flat area, Central Valley, riding their bikes. It's unfair to commuters. It doesn't solve the commute problem. People are still going to be stuck in the commute traffic. Plus, it's unfair to our future. Why tear out an option, a valuable option now before we know we don't need it? Lastly, what's the RTC doing? The RTC is right now studying the transportation systems in our county. They're doing what's called a Unified Corridor Investment Study, a big word. What they're doing is they're studying transportation options for SoCal, Highway 1, and the rail corridor, SoCal Freedom. Those options on the rail corridor include trail, plus passenger and freight rail. It includes the trail, plus passenger rail only. It includes the trail, plus bus rapid transit and freight rail here in Watsonville. And it includes trail only. So they're studying all these options for our corridor. So wrapping up, staying the course, trail with transit, that's a bigger, better vision for our rail corridor. It gets us our coastal rail trail sooner, not later. It serves many, not the few. It maximizes our environmental benefits, keeps all of our options open for the future, and absolutely minimizes the risk of litigation and all those huge payouts. So we say keep the tracks, finish that Unified Corridor Investment Study, and then decide. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Thank you for the lights. Do we have any questions for Mark? Has anybody? Yes.
What would be your favorite? Something like SMART or bus rail or?
Well, can you hear me? My favorite would be some kind of electric train, light rail, electric train. The reason, what I didn't say, because I only had a limited amount of time to make the presentation, the state rail plan it basically says we are going to build electric rail to serve California. The reason we're going to go electric is because it reduces our greenhouse gas emissions statewide. Right here in Monterey Bay, in this county, in Monterey County, we are lucky enough to be part of the Monterey Bay Community Power Project. If you haven't heard of that, you will, because you have a choice of where you're going to get your power. All of our electric power through the Monterey Bay Community Power Project is 100% carbon free. That's the electricity that will drive our train in the future.
Thank you. Do we have another question for Mark? Yes.
Why do people want to take out the track? What is their objection to having it?
I have no idea why people want to tear up the tracks. What they say is they want a super wide bike and pedestrian facility. So the proposal that I'm familiar with is one that's promoted by a group called Greenway. And they're basically promoting a 26-foot wide split bicycle and pedestrian facility. Just to give you some sense of scale around that, that's wider than 2 lanes of the freeway. So they're basically proposing a super freeway, super highway for bikes and pedestrians. I frankly don't think we need it. I think it's a waste of money and doesn't move people. and that's a problem for me.
It's also a waste of a resource that we have, a potentially excellent resource to be able to move large masses of people to and
That's right.
from Santa Cruz and Watsonville. One last question for Mark. Yes.
You just said moving large group of people. That's a major bone of contention among those who oppose the rail. And so how many people a day in various ranges of scenarios might the rail move?
You know, that's one of the great challenges is to try and predict ridership for any kind of transit system. The rail transit feasibility study predicted that the scenario that I talked about, the $133 million scenario, would probably move about 7,000 people a day. But there's been other studies done. Michael Setti, another transportation planner, he just issued a study a couple of months ago on our particular branch line, and he predicted there could be about 14,000 people moving on that rail system every day. And he took into account the interconnections to places like Cabrillo and Harvey West and UCSC. And so when you start looking at other kinds of connections, you can really start driving the ridership. So I think actually the ridership will go off the charts. I mean, I think it's going to be so attractive to our community that people will be jumping on this thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Thank you. So we're going to take a 5-minute break. So go ahead and talk to your neighbor. Perhaps if you have some ideas or questions that you would also like to write. In the meantime, what we'll do is we'll invite our panelists to come to the front and get set up.